Okay, hi everyone. This is the Photoshop tutorial for exercise 2, user experience and interaction design. So first I'm going to show you quickly how to bring in a photo that you've taken of, say, your drawing if you don't have a scanner or access to a scanner, and then to edit it. So I'm going to go to my file folder where I have a photo I've taken. So I've taken this of a book. Your size will be a little bit different. Likely it'll be the full 8.5 by 11 sheet. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a loose mask. So I go to the marquee tool. I'm going to click and drag generally around the layout. And then I'm going to click on the mask tool in the bottom right corner. Okay, so the reason I did that instead of creating a perfect rectangle is because, as you can see, when I took the picture, there's a little bit of skew. So where it's bending, there isn't exactly straight lines. And I actually want to straighten those lines. So I'm going to go to the marquee tool again, and I'm actually going to drag now squares, or rather rectangles, along those lines to straighten it out. So I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to end there right at this tip and cut out the orange here. And so I'm going to make sure I'm on my mask, and I'm actually going to hit delete. So while usually when you're using things like the brush tool and a mask, you want to be on the black to take away the image, I'm going to switch it to the foreground. I'm going to press delete, and it actually deletes the foreground. So that only works on the white color when you press delete. So then I'm going to do the same thing up here, get right to the edge so it's a straight line, continue, delete, the bottom. And the bottom there. So Control or Command D to deselect. So now if it's really nice straight on picture. I like how this is looking. However, there is a lot of orange and yellow in the color. So what I'm going to do is bring the first the levels. So I'm going to click on the levels tool, and this is going to show me like the color scheme of this. I'm going to drag the light in slightly to where the histogram starts, right, this graph. And then I'm going to drag in the darker arrow, right, to increase contrast. And then I'm going to play with those tools a little bit and move this middle ground to see if I want to lighten it or darken it overall. I don't really want that much texture, so I'm going to lighten it a little bit. So when I'm looking at my actual book, it's around there. Okay. You can also do this with the curves tool. So that's right next to the levels tool. And so you can click and drag on the curves to like gain in lightness. So see how I clicked and dragged it up to gain in lightness. Now I can click and drag it down to increase contrast, and you can move that around to change it. So now that I've done both, I can actually compare and contrast. So that is the curves, and there's the levels. And I'm actually much more happy with the curves. It doesn't give me as much as like the glowing effect that the levels does on the orange. The orange is glowing a little bit too much. The next thing I'm going to look at is saturation. So I want to take a little bit of the saturation out of the orange. So I think it's going to be red. So you can see that I clicked on this master. I'm going to click reds, and then I'm going to take that out. Okay, that's good. I don't want to desaturate it too much. Okay, and then I want to go to master and see if I can take some saturation out. So my book's actually gray like this, but I want to keep the orange intact. So I'm going to go back and set that to saturation to 0. And I'm going to hit a new saturation button. So now I have a set 2 versions where I have this one and then the second one. And I'm going to bring the saturation down to where I want the book to look. So that's like about a gray like that, right? So that's -36, it's 0. So now I'm actually going to create a mask using on the hue and saturation layer. So I'm going to go ahead and like use the marquee tool to highlight this area. And I repeated the same action I did before. So I use the marquee tool to highlight the area. I make sure that I'm already selected on this pre-made mask on the saturation, and I hit delete so that I could bring out that orange color. And I'm going to go here on the February, and I actually need to zoom in a little bit closer to grab that accurately. I'm using my arrows to move the marquee tool. I'm going to hit delete again, and the color pops. And then the last thing I'm noticing is I want my blacks to be a little bit more black. So as you can see, this P5JS is a little gray. So I need a little bit more contrast. So I went into my curves. I double clicked on the curve tool, and I'm gonna move this around so that I can get that to pop out a little bit better. Okay. I'm going to go to the hue and saturation one more time, take it down a little bit more. I'm going to look almost all the way. That's more accurate. So great. So now I can zoom out and see that, you know, from the image I took, which has obviously the lighting of the room, I peel that away, and this is my original. This is my original image after it's been masked, and so I add the curves, hue, saturation, and the second hue and saturation, and I have a completely different image. At this point, I just want to remind you to file, export. You can click export as PNG, save it to your file folder, and that's what you can submit as your exercise 2 project.